This is Westfield, New Jersey. The year is 1971. In a massive 19-room Victorian mansion called Breeze Knoll lived a man named John List. To his neighbors, he was the granite man, always clean-shaven, wearing a suit and tie even at the dinner table. He was a devout Sunday school teacher, the very picture of the American dream. He had a beautiful, caring family, a gorgeous home, and a great neighborhood. From the outside, it was a perfect life, but as we all know, dreams have a nasty habit of turning into nightmares, especially when the money runs out. On November 9, 1971, John List's carefully constructed world was about to shatter. But he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He went to work just like any other day, greeted his colleagues, and played the part of the respectable accountant. It was only when he returned to the quiet halls of his mansion that the monster inside was finally let loose. His wife, Helen, was first. She was in the kitchen when he shot her in the back of the head. Then he climbed the stairs to the attic, where he found his mother. A single bullet right above her left eye. There was no fear, no hesitation, just cold-blooded precision. He then calmly sat down and made himself lunch. After his meal, he waited for his children to come home from school. One by one, he greeted them. His 16-year-old daughter, Patricia, and his 13-year-old son, Frederick, both shot in the back of the head as they walked through the door. But he wasn't finished. He drove to his bank, closing his own account and his mother's. Then he went to Westfield High School to watch his eldest son, 15-year-old John Frederick, play in a soccer game. He drove his son home and inside the house shot him repeatedly. Evidence of misfires showed that his son had tried to fight back, a desperate final struggle for his life. By sunset, 5 bodies lay in the grand ballroom, carefully arranged on sleeping bags. But John List's work still wasn't done. He walked through the massive house, turning on every single light. He set the intercom to a religious radio station, filling the empty home with hymns. Then he sat down at his desk and wrote a 5-page letter to his pastor. In it, he claimed he saw too much evil in the world and that he had killed his family to save their souls. With that final, twisted justification, he began to erase himself. He methodically cleaned the crime scenes. He went through every family photograph in the house, cutting out his own face. He lowered the thermostat to preserve the bodies, and then he simply walked out the door and vanished. For 28 days, the lights at Breeze Knoll stayed on. For 28 days, the radio played to an audience of ghosts. Nobody noticed anything was wrong. List was a master of deception. He had sent notes to the children's schools and jobs, claiming the family was visiting an ailing grandmother in North Carolina for a few weeks. It was a calculated lie. Helen's mother was indeed sick and had canceled her visit. List later said if she had come, she would have been his 6th victim. He had also stopped all milk mail and newspaper deliveries, creating a bubble of normalcy around a house of horrors. By the time police finally broke down the door in early December, the granite man was gone. He didn't just run, he had performed a vanishing act. No pictures left behind. No usable fingerprints. No trail. John List became one of the most successful ghosts in FBI history. As investigators would later piece together, List had traveled by train from New Jersey to Michigan, and then on to Colorado. He settled in Denver in early 1972, taking on a new identity. He was now Robert Peter Clark, or Bob for short, a name he stole from a former college classmate who barely even knew him. For years, he lived this new life. From 1979 to 1986, he worked as a controller at a paper box manufacturer. He was a quiet, unassuming man. He even joined a local Lutheran church and ran a carpool for other members. It was at a religious gathering that he met a woman named Dolores Miller. They fell in love and were married in 1985. In 1988, the couple moved to a house in Virginia, where List, still Bob Clark, continued his career as an accountant. He had successfully built a new life on the ashes of his old one. 17 years, 6 months, and 23 days pass. It's now 1989. The John List case is ice cold, a ghost story whispered among law enforcement. But then a television show called America's Most Wanted decides to revisit the case. They'd bring in a brilliant forensic artist named Frank Bender. Bender's job was to do what time itself had done to age John List. He took the old photographs, the only ones the FBI had, and began to sculpt a bust. He wasn't just guessing, he used psychological profiling and the science of aging. He sculpted what John List would look like now, nearly 2 decades later. He added the sagging skin of a man in his 60s, a receding hairline, and, most importantly, he added a pair of thick-rimmed, arrogant-looking glasses based on the style List wore in his youth. The show aired. The clay bust, looking eerily real, stared out from millions of television screens. And 300 miles away from where List was caught, in Denver, a woman who knew him there dropped her coffee. She stared at the screen and whispered, "That's not John List. That's my old neighbor, Bob Clark." The phone lines at America's Most Wanted lit up. The ghost was about to become very, very real. The Granite Man had built an entirely new life. He had a new name, a new wife, a new job. He had hidden in plain sight for nearly 18 years. When the FBI finally knocked on his door and the cuffs snapped around his wrists, he didn't apologize. He didn't show remorse. He simply repeated the same chilling story. He did it to save his family's souls from a sinful world. But at trial, the real truth finally came out, and it had nothing to do with salvation. It had everything to do with pride. John List hadn't killed to save his family. He killed to save himself from shame. He testified that his financial troubles had reached a crisis point in 1971. He'd been laid off from his bank job, a humiliating failure for a man who defined himself by his success. But he couldn't bear to tell his family. So every morning, he got dressed in his suit, picked up his briefcase, and left the house. He would spend his days at the train station, reading newspapers, just killing time until he could go home and pretend everything was fine. He was secretly draining his own mother's bank accounts just to keep up with the mortgage payments. His family life was also crumbling. His wife, Helen, was struggling with alcoholism and the long-term effects of an untreated illness she had contracted from her first husband and hidden for 18 years. The disease, combined with her drinking, had transformed her. She became reclusive, paranoid, and would often humiliate John publicly, tearing down the very image of success he was so desperate to maintain. John List saw his perfect world collapsing. The mansion, the career, The family was all facade, and the cracks were becoming impossible to hide. He couldn't face the humiliation of his failure, so he chose a different path. Instead of facing bankruptcy and social disgrace, he chose murder. He didn't save their souls. He silenced the witnesses to his failure. A chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding behind a suit, a tie, and a perfect suburban smile. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the shadows. See you next time.